Britain, then, was slower to create and develop a police force than the rest of Europe. France had one long before. Indeed, the word police is taken from the French. This fact was not unimportant, as the very idea of a police force was seen as foreign, that is, French, and particularly undesirable, and was generally regarded as a form of oppression. This study marks the first time scientists have linked dike formation to large, damaging earthquakes, and Wathier is looking back through history for more examples. She says researchers will never be able to predict exactly when an earthquake might strike after a dike intrusion. But at least now, researchers and rift zone residents know they're not just in for bangs, they may also be in for shudders.
Study author Samuel Shin, a materials scientist, says this smart glass is cheaper than others, and uses minimal power, much less, for example, than something like a curling iron. And since it's flexible and foldable, he says it could even be used for things like camouflage uniforms, to switch, for example, from green and brown to white and grey. This would be very useful when the background landscape suddenly changes, such as during early snowfall.
The initial thud comes from when those dorsal bursae collide, and the reverberation results from the vibrations that linger when the tissues pull apart. The bursae have to be somewhat sticky for the clapping together and snapping apart to produce noise with the correct loudness and pitch. That stickiness comes courtesy of the mucus. But they did find something that had a much bigger impact on wildlife: habitat quality. The best predictor of wildlife abundance was not human activity, but factors like forest connectivity, nearby housing density, and the amount of adjacent agriculture. The results were published in the Journal of Applied Ecology.
In Japan, the tea ceremony is a ritual-like formalism in which green tea you prepare and serve to multiple guests in a teaful setting. The ceremony can take as long as 4 hours and there are many tradition gestures that the server and the guests must perform.
History rubs shoulders and often overlaps with many other areas of research, from myths and epics to the social sciences, including economics, politics, biography, demography, and much else besides. Some histories are almost pure narratives, while others go in for detailed, tightly focused analysis of, for example, the parish records of a Cornish village in the 16th century.
Not a lot is known about how the transportation of goods by water first began. Large cargo boats were being used in some parts of the world up to 5,000 years ago. However, sea trade became more widespread when large sailing boats traveled between ports, carrying spices, perfumes and objects made by hand.
The speaker is a marine biologist who became interested in the strandlopers, an ancient people who lived on the coastline, because of their connection to the sea. As a child he had spent a lot of time by the sea, exploring and collecting things. Therefore, he began to study them and discovered some interesting information about their way of life and how they hunted.
Dolphins, whales and porpoises are all social animals, but some species are more sociable than others. This depends on the environment because species adopts the lifestyle most suitable to them. Among dolphins, forming groups makes it easier for them to find food, reproduce and gain knowledge. They are safer, too, because dolphins can communicate danger when there are threats around.
Many non-Japanese know a thing or two about traditional tea ceremony, its history, intricacies and religious origins. However, few people outside Japan have a deep understanding of the esoteric meaning of the practice. Indeed, even in Japan, the secret meaning of tea ceremony is little understood except by those who have devoted their lives to the discipline.
For the purposes of argument, culture is divided into material and non-material, and the speaker's aim is to show how they both affect each other. Material developments in tools and technology can affect non-material culture, our customs and beliefs, and the other way around. Genetics is used as an example as it has changed the way we think about life, but also our beliefs have affected its rate of development.
The fact is that those different types of services affect many different dimensions of the well-being of people. And define human well-being is also extremely challenging. However, we identified that there are certain items that provide basic material for life, whether it be food, shelter or happiness. Once most animals reach adulthood, they stop growing. In contrast, even plants that are thousands of years old continue to grow new needles, add new wood, and produce cones and new flowers, almost as if parts of their bodies remained forever young. The secrets of plant growth are regions of tissue that can produce cells that later develop into specialized tissues.
There are three main interpretations of the English Revolution. The long-lasting interpretation was that the revolution was the almost inevitable outcome of an age-old power struggle between Parliament and Crown. The second sees it as a class struggle and a lead-up to the French and other revolutions. Finally, the third interpretation sees the other two as too fixed, not allowing for unpredictability, and that the outcome could have gone either way.
The start of this year was a particularly bad one for house prices. For the first time since 2011, house prices fell in every capital. The second quarter saw a slightly better result but highlighted the continuing weakness in the market. All capital cities except Hobart and Canberra saw house prices fall. But for all cities except Adelaide and Perth, the pace of the falls was slower than it was in March.
Perhaps the most memorable benefit of the program has been the opportunity to meet in small groups, something that is difficult to arrange such a desperate organization. Many officers would have to work together for 30 years but would not know others' strength and weakness.
A recent trend in the entertainment world is to adapt classic works of literature for either TV or movies. One argument is that this is to everyone's benefit, as it introduces people to practices they might otherwise never have, but is rarely done successfully.
As a historian, if you really want to understand the sensibilities of those who lived in the past, you must be like a novelist and get into the skins of your characters and think and feel as they do. You are asked to imagine what it's like to be a peasant in medieval times, asking the sort of questions a peasant might ask. What the writer is saying is that a historian needs imaginative sympathy with ordinary people in the past.
Many papers you write in college will require you to include quotes from one or more sources. Even if you don't have to do it, integrating a few quotes into your writing can add life and persuasiveness to your arguments. The key is to use quotes to support a point you're trying to make rather than just include them to fill space.
The student's reading in his own subject slows down, and his comprehension becomes less secure. He expresses himself slowly and often fails to convey his ideas exactly. He is disappointed to find that under pressure he makes a lot of unnecessary mistakes in areas where he knows the correct language forms. His social relations are difficult as he cannot find the right phrase quickly enough to keep a conversation going. IT may well change the way you live, yet again. Welcome to the world mobile commerce, where your handheld device, it a mobile phone, a personal digital assistant, PDA, or any other wireless application will soon be used for commercial transactions. Skeptical? Consider these facts. In Japan, mobile phones are used for location-based services where the mobile service provider tie up with a host of other players such as restaurants, car rental companies, etc. When the mobile use enters that zone, messages from all these players are flashed on the mobile device. Location-based services are approved in several other countries as well.
Analysts were impressed by the improvement in margins reported across all regions, apart from the United Kingdom, and said that this reflected a clear effort to improve profitability across the business. Although the turnaround is still in its early stages and the valuation looks full, given the challenge of turning around such a large and complex business, this is certainly an impressive start.
In 2005, donor countries agreed on an accord to harmonize their practices. Since then, aid officials have complained that too little has changed on the ground. Conferences of donors in developing countries still tend to be dominated by a small group of North European governments, with the US often absent.
The climate for doing business improved in Egypt more than in any other country last year, according to a global study that revealed a wave of company-oriented reforms across the Middle East. The World Bank rankings, which look at business regulations, also showed that the pace of business reforms in Eastern Europe was overtaking East Asia.